Hello, welcome to another briefing. So in this briefing, per usual, to start out with the satellite, we have quite a bit going on here on the west coast of the United States. I am going to start out by drawing out the jet stream here. This is what's going on in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which is going to consequently steer whatever weather we have in the lower troposphere as well. And if you're looking halfway up the troposphere, which is that layer where our weather occurs, then it's a good it gives you a good idea of the steering flow. And so here we have this trough carved out right over, basically right off of the California coast, but moving into California and parts of the Intermountain West here. We're getting ready to do so. And then we have, you can actually see this low is getting sort of cut off from the main flow of the jet, because you have the main flow of the jet doing something like this, and this is starting to break off from it. And then up north for Seattle and Portland here in the Pacific Northwest, you see pretty dry north-northeast flow, and that actually translates to downsloping flow off of the Cascade Mountains, and that compresses and warms the atmosphere. When the atmosphere is moving down the mountains, it accelerates, compresses and warms, um, and you get pretty warm conditions. That's why we're seeing close to 90 degrees in Portland today. I believe close to 85 in Seattle, parts of Seattle. Low to mid 80s even out by the water. So um, very warm conditions, especially for early May. Usually these are kind of conditions you would expect to see in July or August. Very summer-like conditions for the Pacific Northwest today, with that sort of warm, that eastern edge of the warm high pressure ridge, and you can see this coastal fog is being wiped out by these low level winds, because this pattern right here is translating to a surface high pressure system, and that's driving the low level winds from the northeast as well. Part of this is also mixing down, and you get this fog wiped out here. The fog is literally pushed out off to shore because of this. So, and here in California, you have the fog being lifted and pushed in some cases, but in some cases it is starting to mix out because the air aloft is so cold. The inversion is starting to become undone or broken up in some areas. So that's why you see some patches of clear sky here off of the central coast, even on the central coastline here. Still looking at a lot of mid to high level clouds in the Bay Area, maybe some patches of low clouds. Those low clouds are starting to mix out though with the inversion, but you still have a fair amount of mid to high level clouds. So you just have a lot of moisture um, flowing in up in the upper levels, and you also have a lot of divergence. You have a lot of rising air with these X's here, and these are vorticity maximums, where there's a lot of spin in the air, and downwind of those vorticity maximums you have a lot of air that is getting sucked out at the higher levels, and in order to equalize itself, the atmosphere rushes air in at the lower levels, and you get this rising motion that gives way to a lot of these mid to high level clouds. We're seeing, could expect some thunderstorms for parts of the northern Central Valley and into the Sierra Nevada, where you have enough lift to get those parcels to their convective levels, their levels of free convection. Um, but out by the coast, I don't know if that's going to happen, because we actually still have a bit, the air down at the surface is a little too chilly to get that kind of convection to happen. So that's why I'm saying northern Central Valley, parts of the Sierra. Further south, I don't think there is quite enough moisture, maybe not enough dynamics as well. And along the coast, it's just not warm enough. So there's that. So just expect some clouds, chilly conditions, will probably persist into tomorrow as well. And then as we go through the week, do expect a warming trend. Let's go ahead and look at the closer satellite view. Let's update this and see those are those clear skies in the Pacific Northwest, although we are seeing some of that thunderstorm activity associated with that upper low spilling into parts of southern Oregon as well, especially the inland areas, so do watch out for that. But Portland, Seattle, you're looking at warm, dry weather. And then you're looking at, you see some towering cumulus. It just looks like there's not a lot of cold air aloft for this to do much as you go into Nevada and Idaho. The colder air aloft at the moment is over California, and you see that marine layer is really mixing out, especially over Southern California where that core of the cold air aloft is, and you are seeing some thunderstorm development over the Sierra Nevada, over the Central Valley here. This is a good zoomed in shot of the satellite. It's a good angle to look at as well. And then here in the Bay Area, temperature observations, mostly 50s, 60s, even the warmer inland locations such as Livermore in the 60s. Gusty winds, only 64 for a high in Livermore today, overcast 4,500 feet, so it hasn't even cleared in Livermore really. Let's look at San Jose. Scattered, and then overcast 4,500. Okay. San Jose also did not clear, 65 degrees. San Francisco, nope, overcast 4,700, 64. So pretty socked in Bay Area wide with those low clouds that will maybe start to mix out, but still plenty of higher level clouds as well. You look at the Tamalpais camera, it's pretty much showing what we're talking about last hour here. There's patchy little cumulus here in that lower layer where the inversion is, and then you have that stratocumulus right above it. Those are marine clouds. If you look at this is what we call the sounding. I know this is very technical, but from this morning, it's a really good way of seeing the what the inversion was looking like. This 850 level for reference is about 5,000 feet. This is about 10,000 feet up here. So if you just take this, we're looking at the lowest 5,000 feet in the atmosphere in this little square here. This column just looking straight up from the Oakland airport. This is what, like in a vertical slice of the atmosphere. This is what it was looking like this morning, and you can clearly see the temperature goes down, and then it starts rising here, close to 5,000 feet, roughly 4,000 feet. So in this layer where it's rising here, this is actually, there's a decent amount of lift here. There's a decent amount of positive buoyancy, where the air is warmer than its environment, but then when we get over here, it becomes much cooler than its environment, and it's harder for the air to rise, and you have sort of what we call an inversion cap, where you're not going to get usually any cloud development. Above that, you can get passing high clouds, because you see this really dry layer in between roughly 18,000 feet and 5,000 feet, and maybe a little moisture around 10,000 feet, but just a little piece. And then you see some moisture further up around 20,000 feet here. So those would be passing high clouds. But you're mostly dry. You're definitely hitting a cap around 5,000 feet here. And if we look back at the camera, if you look, it's hard to see exactly, but you can kind of see that cap where you see these patches of clearing here. You see this very thin cloud here. The cap is basically right here. So over here, below the cap, plenty of rising air. That's why you're getting this vertical development here in the clouds. But when they hit that cap, it's set. See how it flattens out here? That's the cap. So that's interesting to notice. And then long-range computer model, what this is showing is basically moving through today, tomorrow, Tuesday, and then just going to midweek here. There's that ridge of high pressure wanting to build behind that trough. That's going to bring warm and dry conditions that we have today over the Pacific Northwest up here. That's going to basically nudge into California as well as we get into midweek. Plenty of warm, dry weather, and then it kind of establishes itself quite nicely into early into maybe next Sunday into Monday the 11th. Could be pretty warm. This doesn't look like a major heat wave, but this definitely looks like a bit of a warm spell. If this were to verify, maybe a weak little trough that would bring a little bit of cooling. And now we're looking far out in computer model guidance, so take it with a heavy grain of salt. But if this were to verify, or something like this were to verify, this is a pretty warm, dry pattern for the rest of the month. Maybe some slight little cool downs with these little troughs here. But pretty warm. This would mean we might get a pretty warm May after having a quite chilly April, but we had a record warm March. So maybe plenty more warm weather to come. Something to keep an eye on for sure. We just take a quick look at potential temperature projections for the next few days. So here's tomorrow, still pretty chilly, mostly 60s. We go Tuesday, it starts to get up to 70 in the warmer spots. Wednesday, you're looking at more widespread 70s, maybe 60s right along the water. And then you look at Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you gradually warm up, 80s inland, starting to show up again, and more widespread 70s for the bays, coast and bays. And then look at by next Monday, you could have coastal areas around 70 degrees right along the water, bayside areas close to 80. And then you could have further inland, you could have low to mid 90s. Could be 96 Sacramento potentially. So, yeah, something to watch for sure. Potential warm spell ahead. We'll keep an eye on that. I think that's all for this video. I wanted to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.